Alright, hello. So, welcome to a different kind of video. So, I took a look around, and to my knowledge, I am allowed to do this. So, this is one of the polls that went around in the Design Council, and they are the votes, or the voting results rather, for the Inaros Augments. So, this is a good way to get an idea of what we can expect for Inaros. The winners may not be the ones that get implemented into the game, as the final decision does go to DE, so if it doesn't end up in the game, these things are what we voted on, not like what can actually go in. Because sometimes some things make it into the polls that are not really feasible for the game to handle, to like processor heavy, will make people drop frames, you know, problems like that that arise and are not really predictable, and like this is just what we're voting on. So the final decisions do go to DE. These are not absolutely what will be added to the game, but there's some really good stuff here. And please let me know if you guys like this type of video after we're done, I guess. But let's get started. I am only going to be going over the winners because that makes sense, although the other options are here if you would like to see them. So, first for Desiccation, we've got enemies blinded by Desiccation and killed by a finisher attack have a chance of spawning a shadow. So, this augment is interesting. It's kind of fun, but if the chance isn't like really high, there's not really much use for it, and even still, even if the chance is particularly high, I don't think that augment would be very good. Probably would be a lot of fun though. So on an ability that doesn't really need a lot of help, like Desiccation is a very, very good one. Having a fun augment is kind of fine. Personally, I would have liked to see the top augment, which is Desiccation adds a stack of Desiccation. Enemies with 3 or more stacks of Desiccation will turn into a sand shadow upon death, but I can already see in my head how that augment probably wouldn't actually work in the game, because you'd have so many enemies that have the 3 stacks die at once that they would just, like, it would just crash the game, and there would probably be some big problems there. So, a reasonable augment. Honestly, I can't really think of a whole lot of stuff that would be great for Desiccation to have. It's already a fantastic ability. So, there's not a lot to be done with it besides having some fun, which is totally fine. Moving on, we've got Devour. So, this is the augment that has me very excited, because it's a really cool concept, and it's a useful effect, and it is also a fun augment in my eyes. So, gaining health from Devour also stores progress towards revival in the next sarcophagus bleed out. So, at high levels, you may use Devour quite a bit to like go from like dangerously low back all the way up to full, and that's not super uncommon for Inaros to have some safety for a second, especially if he has teammates that can kind of clear the room if he is overextended and is kind of outside of his bounds. Of course, this is at very high levels. But being able to store a revive is just like essentially a hard doubling of his EHP, which is really, really cool and is also useful. So that's like, it's just a really neat concept, like just to be able to store a second life. Which, like, there's nothing that is like, there's nothing bad about that. It's really cool. It kind of works into what I feel like a lot of Inaros would already be doing anyway. So that's really fantastic. I'm really glad that that one was winning by such a large margin. That's probably going to be a really, really cool augment that I suspect a lot of people would want to use that one, because being able to have an augment that is, when you would die, instead do not, is pretty good. Moving on to Sandstorm. So, Sandstorm, these polls are pretty close, and there's actually a lot of good ones here. The one that won is Inaros' Sandstorm inherits melee elemental mods to apply procs on enemies that come in contact with the storm. So that one's cool, but it's really neat, and it's actually probably more useful that, like, I'm just trying to think of a situation where you would want that, and it's actually probably more useful than I'm giving it credit for, because usually whenever I think about status, I think about the main ones that most people are using in terms of what elemental damage they're using, which is like Corrosive, which, like, as a Sandstorm, it's not really great. Blast, as a thing that's already crowd control, not really great. And then you have like radiation and viral. Viral, that's actually not bad. Giving a ton of enemies viral all at once, that's pretty solid. And radiation, they're already crowd controlled, so that doesn't really matter very much. But if we think about the other stuff that people don't really use as like nearly as often, like gas. So depending on how gas procs would interact with the storm, like if they're doing like really consistent procs, that might be really, really good actually for just like building a ton of damage up in like a condensed area. How it ends up working, not sure. Could be really, really cool. There's definitely potential there. The one for me, though, that would be personally my choice is the runner-up, which is when casting Sandstorm, Inaros teleports to the crosshair location and pulls in nearby enemies. That one, pretty fucking cool. Useful, but also still, like, a solid, like, do-it thing. It's also a lot of fun. I feel like teleporting is... Come on. Teleporting. But yeah, pretty solid, like, good augment there. And then down here in Scarab Swarm, we have a very, very tight race. And the one that won is really, really cool because it will give Inaros more possibilities if it gets added to the game. So Inaros will resist all status proc and knockdowns. With Scarab Armor, each status and knockdown resisted will eat up a percentage of the Scarab Armor. So this is really, really cool because two things. One, Inaros doesn't have a way to resist status right now. So, in certain fights, like let's say Vayhek's fight, regular Vayhek on Earth, not the raid, it's very annoying to be constantly procced with magnetic, basically. So, equipping that augment would let him get through situations like that where, say, he's not being allowed to use his powers, which is very unfortunate. But in addition to that, it also blocking knockdowns means that the main, in my eyes, the main weakness of Inaros being knocked down and then just being a punching bag for like 1 or 2 seconds, which is what is usually, like, that's usually what can get Inaros killed. You're removing a lot of your danger there, which is awesome. So, with that, you could potentially switch up a build. Like, for me, I think that Handspring is pretty required on Inaros just for, like, some extra super safety. And ability just to like get through pretty much any situation. With this, you could actually remove Handspring for another Choice Exilis mod, which would be really, really cool. So that mod is not only good, but also opens up like some more build possibilities by giving him new things and giving him advantages in certain situations where it might be more advantageous to play Rhino. So that would be a very, very solid augment. Kind of depends a little bit on how much of the Scarab Armor it eats up, though, but not a huge deal. Like, let's say if it was 3% every time you resisted a proc or a knockdown. That's not bad. It's not really that bad at all. But yeah, and the runner-up to that is while Scarab Armor is activated, enemies who attack Inaros in melee will be affected by Scarab Swarm. I'm really happy that this one did not win. Because this augment would have the same problem that Unairu's, Medusa skin, I think that's what it's called, ability would have, which is you're planning on being hit. So at the point where you're planning to get hit, that is immediately not good. And if you're restricting it to melee, then you've cut down on the amount of enemies that this mod can affect to such a degree down to like basically enemies that don't really matter. The only melee enemy that you would even care about this happening for would be maybe Manix. Maybe. Which is just not very good on the whole. It's just not, like, it's not a solid thing in Unairu. It wouldn't be a solid thing as an augment for Inaros. And I don't even really see the fun in that one. So I'm kind of pretty glad that that did not win. But the one that did win, though, I'm very excited for. If we, like, any of these augments, if we got half of these, it would be fantastic. Like, even if we didn't get this Devour one that I'm very excited for, like, having the Desiccation one would be a lot of fun. There might be, like, a really stupid gimmick build that I could use and just kind of mess around with. Sandstorm, potentially very strong, and Scarab Swarm, like, really great. So hopefully we see these very soon. And also, let me know what you guys thought of this video, again, because it's I could continue doing more of these, because I really like talking about the augments, because I think the augments as a whole are really interesting, and the concepts behind them and how they get voted on. All that stuff is really cool. So, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Let me know what you thought.